name is Madison Butler. For any of you who don't know, most people know me as the blue-haired unicorn. I am the chief people officer of Grab, but I also spend a great deal of my time centering on psychological safety and what it means to dismantle oppressive systems within our organizations. And I'm super excited to lead this conversation with Christopher here. And by the way, my pronouns are she, her. I wish I had a way to pop that onto the screen. However, I've never used this platform before. So those are my pronouns, and I will let Christopher introduce himself.
Yes, hello everyone. I am Christopher Tabora. I am a global talent acquisition partner and human resources manager, most recently at TikTok. I wish I was as cool as Madison, but I will definitely, say my pronouns are he, him. I definitely am here to help demystify a bunch of things when it comes to getting a job back during a layoff or whatever the case is. Sorry, my screen is here, my camera is here.
So I wanted to start this conversation with, I think, just that, taking the mystery away out of riffs, out of layoffs. I think being on the side of corporate that we are, I think we have a better lens than I think most people get, because we typically get to see the inner workings of how this happens. But I wanted to start off as what is one thing you want people to leave this conversation knowing about layoffs?
I think one thing, I think that if I had to say one thing for people to be aware of on this layoff, and this would be for both sides of it, is that, if you are being laid off, definitely know what your options are, right? Like, whether you're a full-time employee, whether you're a contractor, whatever the case is, if you are being laid off from an organization, do your research, see what these other companies are giving out in terms of offers, and try and negotiate that against what you're currently getting from your employer as a severance package. Now, definitely could dive into that a lot deeper, but want to just make sure that we give time for people to come in and things of that nature.
For sure. So I think something that I think is actually really hard to wrap your mind around in the process of a layoff is, how do you make sure that it's not you? Which is probably a trick question. But something I want to ask you is, for the people listening, is there a way for you to protect yourself in terms of a layoff? And what does that mean to you when I say something like that?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, definitely a difficult question, right? I think, I feel like we all thought being in tech, we were safe, right? Like, we're like, oh, we're in the tech industry. Like, technology is driving everything. Maybe the technology sector would be a safe space. But, unfortunately, that wasn't the case this go around. So I would say, when it comes to trying to find a safe space from a layoff, really identifying what you're driving in your role and how your team is bringing impact to the business. You as an individual are bringing impact to the business, and really outlining, what you do so you can showcase that to your team or your management or whatever the case is, right? You're definitely going to want to secure your position within the organization, and you're going to want to have details to showcase okay, why do we need you type of situation, right? Of course, that's different at every organization, dependent on how, maybe if you're at a startup, you definitely, I feel have a stronger, bond with the team and the company. And, since it might be a smaller organization, having your bullet points together, summaries saying why you should be kept or why you think your role is of value, could be helpful. Whereas maybe out of Amazon, where you let go 20,000 people, probably wouldn't have saved you, right? But to stick to the question, right, in terms of what could be safe areas, for myself, what I'm noticing is a lot of businesses outside of tech are booming, right? There's still medical, healthcare, no matter what. Me being a recruiter, my whole industry is wiped out in tech. So for me, I'm noticing healthcare is super strong, even for the TA perspective, but healthcare companies do have tech roles as well. And it's also good to like not just have experience in one area, like having a variety of different like verticals on your background is super helpful, or like categories. But yeah, I'm definitely super long-winded, so I don't want to like get carried away on just one question. Like,
Oh, it's fine. We have 45 minutes.
okay.
And
Like,
honestly, that industry piece is so true. I think a lot of people looked at me sideways when I said I was leaving tech to come into cannabis. And it's
wow.
been, and for me, like I have my own reasoning, but the long, or I guess the short of it is, I think tech did a really bad job of bringing people to the table when it boomed. 20 years ago, tech had the opportunity to really help close the wealth gap by being intentional about who they allowed at the table. And what did tech do? Tech just actually widened the wealth gap, because now we all know that 99% of VC dollars go to straight white men. And so I wanted to get into an industry where I could help shift that narrative, because cannabis is going to do what tech did, but can we be more intentional? But when I tell you, everybody looked at me sideways when I said I was leaving tech. And it's true, there are so many other industries out there, even with tech roles within them, because at the end of the day, at this point, we are all utilizing technology to run our businesses.
Right.
Like at this point, we don't really have much option. Filing cabinets have essentially met the end of life. And so I think one of the things that I want to talk about too is, in terms of protecting yourself, I think one of the things that has been really important to me, and something that I coach people on as well, is the concept of always be looking. And so when I say always be looking, I would love for you to talk a little bit about what that means to you.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I love that you bring that up, right? Because it is exactly what everyone needs to do, right? Like, always be looking could be as simple as just like connecting with people on LinkedIn, adding people from companies you want to work at, trying to get an idea of like, is the grass greener over there? Like connecting with recruiters, keeping your options out there, being knowledgeable about like what your value is in the market, like always be looking could be as simple as like you responding to an email or a LinkedIn message, or, you know, an outreach from a company, a person, whatever the case is, and just having a strong knowledge of like, hey, like these new roles that are reaching out to me are offering this much money. They might have better resources, they might have better benefits. And you could utilize all that information to like make an impact in your current role, or even leave and go to another opportunity, right? Like always be looking to me is like very key, especially like when you're not happy in your company and you feel like you're kind of being cornered in, especially like as a minority, as a queer person in tech, or a queer person in corporate America in general, like so having like these intersectionalities and being at our jobs sometimes could make us feel like this is our only option. And honestly, like there's so many other options out there. So always be looking could be as simple as like updating your LinkedIn profile, like adding additional details to your profile, because what a lot of people don't realize is that all of this is searchable. Like your whole LinkedIn, like everything you post, all of the words, like everything is searchable. So as a recruiter, like when I'm on LinkedIn and I'm typing in keywords to find people, I will pull up your profile based on what you have written on there. So if you have like all the keywords, all the best titles, the most current this and that, that's going to be super helpful. And another thing, like, sorry, like a garbage truck passing by, but like, I feel like my New York folks would understand that, even though I'm not in New York. But like, they're like, "Oh my god, I feel at home with the garbage truck noise." But on the West Coast in LA, I feel like it's like maybe cars or something, or San Diego, it's like jets. But anyways, in terms of like your profile, right, being searchable, like that's a simple way to keep yourself on the market, keep yourself fresh. Like sometimes you'll get reached out for jobs that you already have, but they have a different title. And you're like, oh, wow, like I didn't even know that other companies are calling this that. Maybe my company is the only company that calls my role this. I should probably change my role on LinkedIn so I'm more searchable, or whatever the case is. But yeah, that's just a few things that come top of mind. Like,
Yeah. And I so agree. I think titles are the most nuanced thing on the planet. And so I actually, for those of you who don't follow me, I have two partners. One of them is in sales, but recently he was in sales at a like HR slash recruiting tech company. So his title is actually talent solution specialist. But if I looked that up on LinkedIn, I would actually most likely assume you were in the TA space, not in the sales space. And so even just thinking really intentionally about if you aren't going to change your title on LinkedIn, how can you add in words so you're still coming up in these recruiter searches? And I actually fundamentally believe it's when you are happiest at your company is actually like the best time to be looking, because you're looking from a very unbiased perspective. Where when you're unhappy, it is so easy to be like, I'm just going to jump ship, because that is the easiest thing when you are already in a place of like, I hate it here. I hate logging in every morning. But when you are happy, you actually have to weigh your options. And so I have this thing that I kind of keep running, and it's live. So I change it when, my needs change. But I have a nice to have, need to have, absolutely cannot have list in terms of what I need from a working environment. And to be honest, if a company can hit more of those things than the company I'm going to think about it. And it may not mean that I leave, but not only do I interview because I like to keep myself good at interviewing, because interviewing is a practice. I also want to make sure that I am doing the best thing for me. Data shows us that when we leave an organization, we can most likely receive somewhere between a 20 and 30% bump. If you stay with your same organization and go with a traditional pay raise model, you're maybe looking at 6% every year. If you stay for 10 years versus if you change companies every 24 months, your pay at the end of changing companies is going to be much higher than if you just stayed with the same company. I think 10 years ago, people who are probably 10 years older than me, like that model would stress them out. They would scream at me. However, we are no longer in the mindset of I'm giving my all for a company. I come in and I give my all for me, period. Because none of these companies find that I'm not replaceable. And I'm really good at what I do. And they still think every single one of us is replaceable, as we're seeing with these damn layoffs. So I have to treat myself like I'm not replaceable to me. And that's what matters. And so I'm always looking, and I love my company, but I'm always happy to have conversation. And the best part is, like, if it's not a right role for me, I'm happy to make sure that I'm connecting people in my network, because I want to hook people up in my network because I want them to get their bag too. And so always making these connections is really helpful, because sometimes when you make connections for other people, let me tell you, they repay you in 10x the dividend. So talking about that, I would love to hear you talk a little bit about how building a personal brand can be really helpful to you in the concept of always be looking.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I'll even for example, I think maybe I could share my screen real quick, but just being, oh, actually it won't let me share it while we're live, but my apologies. So basically what I was gonna show was like my LinkedIn profile, right? Like, I was gonna show like the headline where, usually some people will just say like, their job title at whatever company. Like I utilize that space to add a variety of different things that I'm doing for my personal brand, right? So although I'm in talent acquisition, I'm also in human resources. I'm also in diversity and inclusion. I do career coaching. I do resume writing. Shameless plug. No, I'm just kidding. But also, I host a podcast, a mentor. I identify as Afro Latino, military spouse. So really just kind of branding yourself in a sense of like, what is going to be helpful for me, right? On these sites that we're using to get attracted by these companies, these brands, whatever the case is. So for me, the reason I put these specific categories on my LinkedIn, especially in the diversity inclusion space, showcasing I'm Afro Latino, showcasing I'm gay, showcasing military spouse, all of these things, because I know that there are companies out there that have these ERG groups and have these diversity inclusion roles and diversity inclusion partners, that are out there looking for more diverse talent for their businesses. So I put that on my personal brand. So then that way, it finds more avenues and resources for me to find roles and opportunities. But then also to showcase like my personal interests, right? Like being a career coach, I really do like to help people. And I feel like when people are putting their personal brand on their pages, like you're able to find additional resources for people to help you as well, right? But also utilizing your personal brand to leverage, your network and leverage like what's out there to be utilized with your skills, right? Like no one knows what you're doing unless you're showcasing that in some way. Whether it's like digitally, you have like, a portfolio of some sort, or, you have like tangible evidence. Like even you yourself, like you have so much content like out there, like, looking at like your personal brand and seeing like how many like different partnerships like you've worked on, Madison, and articles that you've written and things that you've put out there. Like when it comes to personal brand, like I feel like you're definitely like the epitome of that, right? Like I feel like when I look at your background, I'm like, damn, like I could be doing more. Like like I should be like writing stuff and like putting posts and like, being like getting these partnerships and stuff. I feel like, putting yourself out there is the most beneficial thing I've seen lately. I feel like authenticity lately has been like very key, like on all of these platforms. Whereas like, someone like myself in the TAHR space, like we're told to be like this private incognito person, and kind of like limit ourselves in the sense of like what we're allowed to like say and like do, but um I feel like your personal brand is really like what's going to drive you to your better self, the best version of yourself, because you're not hiding who you are and what your talents are, and people are going to recognize that. um but yeah, like I think that your personal brand is super important.
So we got a question in the chat that I actually want to address. And
Yeah.
Ali said, I know that it's important to be who you are, but aren't some employers homophobic and prejudiced? I'm going to be straight up. I'm not going to work for someone who's homophobic and prejudiced. Like, it's not, I'm going to put myself out there first so that we don't meet. And so I think one of the things that's really important is that I am so upfront in who I am that like I want those people to be like, oh God, block, block, block.
Yeah.
I'm protecting my own peace. I don't have time. And so that has been one of the things that I always talk about is personal brand comes with a ton of rejection, but the right kind of rejection, because I want those people to stay away from me, because all they're going to do if I work for them is traumatize me. And then, especially being in the space that you and I are in, I'm going to have to look other people who live the way you and I do in the face and be like, come work here. I
Right.
need therapy because I'm here, but yes, come work here. And I would never be able to live with myself convincing other queer people of color and Black people to come work at a place that's going to traumatize them.
Okay, and like I'm 100% on board with you on that. Like I've had like people in my personal life, who have been like, maybe we should like limit your profile to just like keeping it focused on your roles and focused on like the skills that you have versus like being so personalized and like sharing all this information about your background that might not be relative to like these opportunities. And I'm like, yeah, I get that, but at the same time, for me, like I am just an open person as in general. When it comes to like my profession as a talent acquisition human resources, people are already scared of us. They already think like they're talking to a principal, they're getting in trouble, like we're like the cops of like the business, we're like the gatekeepers, right? Like we can like either let you in or let you out. And I don't want people to feel like, you know, I'm not here for them. Like I work in talent acquisition because I want to change people's lives. I work in HR because I want to make sure people are happy in their jobs and they're not just doing this, for the money. Like ultimately, like we're doing it for the money, right? We wouldn't be working if it wasn't for money. But at the end of the day, like, I want to make sure that, as this like alleged gatekeeper or like, person that is at the doors to let you come into this business, that we have people like us there. We have gay people, we have minorities, we have Afro Latinos, we have Black people, Spanish people, trans, like everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, so for me, like, I need these businesses to know that this is who I am and that this is who they're bringing to the table, because this is what I also want to bring to the table. Like everyone deserves a seat at this table that I'm at. And if a business isn't okay with that, then by all means, pass me on. Like, there's like that all saying, like that's I forget what the saying is, but it's like, scared money won't make no money, or like not all money is good money. Like all of these like, analogies or like just little like narratives. Like for me, it's like not all money is good money. I don't need to work at these businesses that are going to make money off of me and my talents, but won't allow me to be myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And there's so many opportunities out there. If I could share my screen right now, I would show you like over 88 companies that I literally have applied to and looked at roles that are currently hiring right now, you know, and they all see my LinkedIn profiles, they all see this, and I haven't gotten any pushback from that. So there are options out there. Like, don't limit yourself. Don't feel like, you know, you're in a space where you can't be yourself, especially in 2022. Like, I hate that we have things like don't say gay in like Florida. Like, you know, I have a lot to say to that. But, for me personally, I feel like as someone who's in talent acquisition, like I'm telling you, as a human resource person, like I've been doing this for 10 years, like right now is the best time to be putting on your profile that you're gay, that you're black, that you're Spanish, that you're trans, that you're this, that you're that, whatever the case is. Like, we literally have like diversity inclusion teams at these larger companies, you know, at these smaller companies, you know, you might be the first person ever, but at the same time, like, that is okay. Sometimes you have to be that person that opens the doors for other people, you know? So like putting yourself out there is going to be beneficial. It's going to make you, I know that there are people who don't want to be searched, and I understand that. Protect yourself by all means. Do what you feel is aligned with yourself. But at the end of the day, I want you to know that there are people just like me who are just like you and have these jobs, have these like, you know, work at these wonderful organizations. So I don't want you to live in fear of, you know, Sally and Jimmy's company that doesn't want to hire you. Who cares? You need one job, not 1,000 of these other ones. So don't worry about these companies. Don't worry about that. I think that if you look into diversity inclusion and you see like how prominent it is, even like, you know, this whole session that we're having with House, like, you know, us being in this space is already showcasing to you that like this talent is what is being attracted to the market. Like, look at all of us here right now, you know, like we all came to this event because we knew that it was about trans people of color, queer people of color, you know, people that are minorities in the space. And we were not afraid to be here right now. So we should not be afraid to be ourselves ever. But yeah, sorry for going on that rant.
No,
I'm just
first
like,
off,
you know, like,
normally I'm on the other side and I'm so long-winded. So I love this.
yeah.
And you know, I think part of it is that we deserve to be here. I think I've often lived in this mindset for a very long time where I had to decide what rooms I deserve to be in. And at the end of the day, I deserve to be in any room I want to be in, but I have to decide, do they deserve me? And let me tell you, Jim and Sally's company doesn't deserve me.
Exactly.
Absolutely not. And they don't deserve it. And that is absolutely okay to decide what spaces actually deserve me. And I think at the end of the day, we really do. It's exactly what you said. Sometimes we do have to open the doors, but this is exactly why I teach organizations. You have to work on inclusion before diversity, because if you cannot build a space that allows people to be exactly who they are, which is human, and might I add, the human experience is really, really fucking messy. And it doesn't get less messy with like position or title or money. It's messy. And if you can't allow people to experience that, then you don't actually have inclusion. And too many companies want us to come in and be like stock version photos of ourselves. They want me to be Black and queer, but quietly, in a way that doesn't address oppression, in a way that doesn't address wrongdoings, just in a way that like looks a little bit like, you know, Pride in June, or maybe Black History Month, right. But like, oh God, please don't talk about it the other 10 months out of the year. And don't you dare mention intersectionality. And so much of this, actually, the weight and the responsibility is on companies to create organizations that are ready to support us, keep us safe, and also allow us to thrive. And so thinking just about that, a lot of companies haven't done that, which means when we're looking at layoffs, predominantly we are a category that is affected at a way higher rate than that of straight white men. So how can we not only care for ourselves when we are a product of this, but also recognize that it is not a reflection of our work, our character, or who we are? How can we really make sure that we are taking care of ourselves after a layoff?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's exactly what you're saying, right? Like, you know, like make a mental note that this is not about you. Like, and it's unfortunate to like think that way, right? Like, oh, this is not about me, but I got laid off. Like, you know, like I'm the one going through this. But when you look at like what's going on like around you and all of these people that are being laid off and looking at the numbers, like that helps like showcase to you like, hey, like it's not me. Like this, there's things going on in the world right now. There's this shift that's going on in the world that is causing these things to happen. It has nothing to do with your skill. It has nothing to do with your ability, has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that like I honestly don't think these companies could pay their bills. Like I feel like, you know, the wake of the pandemic kind of showed everyone, right? Like, hey, like when the pandemic hit, like initially all these companies went bankrupt, right? Like, and that's kind of crazy, like how, you know, a lot of these companies aren't able to sustain themselves. So if we saw that happen and, you know, we see all these companies laying all these people off, like we kind of have to put the data together like, hey, this isn't about my personal ability. It's about, you know, these businesses and how they're running themselves and whatever their goals are and what they're thriving to do. It has nothing to do with me as an individual. Like, I feel like our whole goals and like working at these companies anyways is really to build our resumes out, right? To build our like credentials together, right? Build our credibility. Like, yeah, you might have got laid off, but you just learned all these new skills at this company. And now you need to use that knowledge that you just gained to bounce back into the market and like get yourself this next job, right? We talked about earlier how like the people that have stayed at companies for like 10 years, like they would like cringe at like us saying like, oh my God, leave a company every 2 years, every 2 to 3 years. But honestly, like that's how you're going to leverage like how much you're making. Like I'll even share like a personal story, right? Like, you know, like I was laid off and when I looked not at TikTok, but like at another organization and looking at like, you know, what I was making and looking at what these new jobs are offering, it doing the same exact job, it's like literally like 60 to 100K more than what I'm making. And I think that that's crazy, you know, but I look at the layoff situation as like a blessing in disguise, you know, like for me, I'm like, okay, like this is now an opportunity for me to continue doing what I was doing, but also capitalize on the fact that I can make more off of this situation. You know, me being a private person, like I haven't like shared anything on LinkedIn, like where a lot of people have posted, like I've been laid off, this, that, and the third. I personally feel like that is such a prominent way to like get attention on yourself and to find a new role, right? Like I feel like when you're going through a layoff, like you're feeling so much at once, it's super overwhelming. And I'm like already have so much anxiety. So I'm like definitely like, you know, the type of person to just like freak out. So like I need to just like, you know, take all that energy that's like giving me anxiety and making me feel like, oh my God, like what just happened and channel that into finding a new role. I think it's a lot easier for me because like I'm a recruiter, right? So it's like I see people get jobs all the time and I see people not get the job all the time. So my day to day is that giving someone the job, not giving someone the job. So it's like I see like that you will eventually land the role. You just have to put in the effort. You have to apply, you know, get network, get these people to get your attention and, you know, get your foot into the door. So it's like for me, like, you know, with this layoff situation, like definitely take the time to feel everything that you feel. Like everything you feel is valid in terms of like your emotions, you know, if you feel like, you know, your world is crashing on you, like feel all of that. Like allow yourself to like, you know, go through everything that you're going through, but at the same time, just know that you have been in worse situations. You know, like I feel like for me being a minority in this space and to like be able to make like six figures and be queer and like be a TA HR partner like at a large tech company and then like 15-year-old me would be so proud of myself. Like 20-year-old me would be so proud of myself. Like, you know, like I never thought that I would be able to get to this point in my life. And a lot of times like we have to reflect on like, hey, like there were times where my life was so much worse than what's happening right now. And I got through those dark times. And yeah, this sucks right now, But if I crawl back into a hole and just let this define my life, that's not who I am. Like I need to take this situation and say, damn, this sucks. I'm gonna cry about it because I'm a crybaby. But like, but after that, like I'm gonna dust myself off and like navigate my space. Like, hey, like if you got laid off and you are still working at your company and they have not pulled the trigger yet, like let's say your like end date is like a month from now or like 2 weeks from now, utilize that whole time, talk to everybody at your company, post in, if you're in Slack on those companies, post in like the group chats, like, hey, I'm being laid off. If anyone has any referral, don't, maybe you don't have to say you're being laid off, like whatever you feel comfortable saying. But if anyone has any referrals or any networks that they could share with me or any opportunities or whatever the case is, you have no idea who any of these people's networks are. Like, I literally have landed roles and like navigated like, a situation that could be negative and turned it into a positive situation. Earlier I mentioned posting on like LinkedIn and like maybe showcasing what happened, but at the same time, like what you bring to the table. So then that way you can land your next role and get that attention where people will DM you about roles that aren't posted even online. Because, for me, I mentioned earlier about like these 88 jobs that like I found to like, find another role for like HR or talent acquisition. And like some of these roles weren't posted on LinkedIn, they were posted directly on the company site. Or I saw someone post that they got laid off and someone in the comments said they were hiring. And I went to that company and looked at and saw what roles they had available. So, you know, definitely feel everything, go through the motions, go through what you need to go through. But at the same time, like leverage this opportunity, take advantage of the fact that, we have a bunch more resources out there. New York just passed a law where now you can see how much every job is making in New York. Now, of course, not everyone here might live in New York. I don't even live in New York, but what that does show you is how much that job was paying. Now, imagine looking at a job that you currently just got laid off from and they're paying 100K more than what you're currently making. Like, you would literally be like, what the hell? Like, I let me get on this, like so for me, like I feel like, it's not always about money, maybe you really were attached to that company, we really were attached to this industry. Like I feel like these are all learning lessons as well. Like, we need to not be so invested in these jobs, invested in these companies, and really be invested in ourselves. We know what's best for us, we know what we need in our future, and regardless of what's going on in the economy, what's going on with layoffs, what's going on with everything in the world, our jobs are never secure, So I feel like we always, as we mentioned at the beginning, always be looking, always be, prepared, because layoffs or not, like we need to make sure that, especially we as trans people, people of color, people, queer people, minorities, whatever the case is, like we don't get all the resources that everyone has out there for them. So we're the last people to know that we could make six figures taking a role or, get join a company in tech or whatever the case is. So for us to all be in this room right now and be in this space, like we are truly blessed, and we need to take advantage of the opportunity of all the people that we're meeting and how we could leverage, our own community to bounce back from this layoff. Like for me, I feel like we need to leverage even our allies as well. Like there are times where we will be looking for companies or looking at jobs where we might not see people that, identify as us and look like us, but they still respect us and they still, love us for who we are and allow us to be ourselves. And we have to network with our allies as well, because for me, I can't say how many times I've had people who have known who I am in and out and like, you know, have brought me into a space where I might have been the first person or I might have been a part of a community, but I had allies in that space, like, so I feel like right now, like, take in everything that you're going through, but at the same time, be prepared, be resilient, look at your network, see it like the people that you've met and known through like all the companies that you worked at in the past and what they're doing now and how you could use that opportunity to like, find out about other companies and other opportunities. And it's really all about like being authentic, and like engaging with people and like finding that next opportunity. Like I'm a go-getter and I'm very extroverted, but so I feel like it's easy for me to like say these things. So for my introverts out there, like, like if you don't feel like you're that proactive person, you're that engaging person, like at the very least, what you could do is like people's posts, reshare people's posts, like whatever the case is to like get attention on these activities and get more resources available for you on like LinkedIn or like whatever the case is. You have to utilize your personality, who you are, to make yourself get to this next step, because it is going to be hard, right, in terms of like fighting your inner self, but at the same time, like these are the things that we have to do, and there are people out there that will help you.
So I'm an introvert, which is probably like a shock because I get up on a lot of stages and I do a lot of talks. However, I am a real true introvert where I get like, I can get on the stage, no problem, but please don't like ask me to network and work a room. So when I was first on LinkedIn, which now LinkedIn for me kind of feels like another appendage, it's just like attached to me, unfortunately. I was really bad at it. And so I actually scheduled time on my calendar for certain things. Like I would, on a Monday, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to connect with 10 new people. Today, I'm going to write a piece of content. Tomorrow, I'm going to make sure that I engage with 3 other pieces of content, and like slowly built my network in a way that was bite-sized pieces of human interaction, but also kept myself accountable. And that really worked for me. Now it's like 5 years later, and I have 142,000 people who follow me, so I don't have to do all of that. But I think something I've also had to learn, not only as an introvert, but as a Black woman, I'm really bad at asking for help. I'm really bad at asking for what I want, simply because I don't want it to be seen as a weakness. Because as a Black woman, you're expected to be able to do all the time. And so I encourage you, even when it feels awkward, when it feels weird, even if you ask for help behind closed doors and you're not necessarily ready to make a LinkedIn post, reach out to your network, ask for help, because I promise you, people suck, but there are a lot of really good ones. There are a lot of really, really, really good people out there. And it is so eye-opening when you ask for help, what comes to you. Um, and so, and we have like a couple more minutes. And so I want to open it up for some questions, but I guess I really want to ask you, what is one thing you really want people to walk away with this knowing and understanding?
Yeah, I definitely want people to know that you are not alone, right? Like, I feel like, you know, being a queer person, a minority, like, I feel like a lot of the times we feel like we're alone in our situations, and we might be the first person in our family, like, going through this situation, or like, be the first person in our, group of friends or whatever the case is that's like feels like we can't like genuinely like express this to others, or like they don't understand what we're going through. But I promise you, you're not alone. Like, looking on LinkedIn, I hate to like keep talking about LinkedIn, but like, it's just like a platform that is super helpful, and like where you could find a bunch of other people. And yes, there are a lot of sad stories about people being laid off, but behind all of those layoffs are also a bunch of other roles, like me as a HRBP, talent acquisition person, like when I'm looking at roles, if they're hiring recruiters at certain companies, that means they're hiring a variety of different other roles, a variety of different people. Like when they hire a recruiter, that means that they probably have like 300 openings for that person to work on, or whatever the case is, right? Of course, there are smaller businesses, smaller organizations might not have as many openings, whatever the case is. Your industry or your specific role might not have as many openings, or whatever the case is, but the opportunity is still out there for you, whether that be starting your own business, doing something like this, like house, but bringing your community together, encouraging one another, empowering one another. I want everyone to know that like you can find your next opportunity. Don't feel, like you're left in the dark now because you were laid off. Like, no, guess what? When you joined that job that you worked at for XYZ amount of time, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it was, you didn't have that experience before you came to that company. And now you do. And now you have 1 to 3 years more experience, 5 years, whatever it was, more experience than you had before. And now you can add that to your resume. And now you can be looked at jobs for more money. Like when companies are hiring, like they look at our years of experience or background, whatever the case is, and they align that to the role. And they also align that to a level and they align that to a compensation. So a lot of the times, like, we don't realize we're discrediting ourselves because we're not showcasing on our resumes or our LinkedIn's, you know, the right roles or the right experiences that we need to in order to get us to this next job, this next increment in pay, this next level in our career. So I feel like, definitely walk away from this conversation knowing that, you can leverage this opportunity. Every like downfall is a way for you to get back up and brush yourself off and literally be the next best version of you. Like I'm literally going through the same situation looking for another role, and it's like although I might be very like positive about it and very resilient about it, like there are times where I also feel down about it as well. So like, take that time to like, process your feelings. But at the end of the day, like you will find that job. Every door that closes, several doors are opening. For me, like I wouldn't have known that I could go and get the same job that I'm doing and make another 100K and not even I wouldn't have known that if I wouldn't have been going into the market right now and looking for other roles or whatever the case is, right? So don't let this situation, be a downer. I know it's the holidays. I know that, all of these things are happening. But at the end of the day, like you are blessed, you are alive, you are healthy, you are here. Like what I learned through the pandemic is that the world could take everything away from me, but it can't take away my state of mind. It can't take away like what I know and what I can do and what I'm capable of. A job does not define you. Like don't let this be like the all telling story. Definitely take this in and say, hey, I did this before. Watch me do it again, do it better, make more money and kill it. Like you are a boss and you've always been. So don't let this one moment like take over you. Let it be some hours, let it be a day, whatever the case is. Feel it, cry about it. I'll cry with you. But at the same time, like, go out there. There's hella companies hiring. Like I literally, like I mentioned before, I've applied to a bunch of different companies. If they're hiring recruiters, they're definitely going to be hiring like in a variety of different roles. I support a lot of like engineering hiring, tech recruiting hiring. So, if anyone is looking for like career coaching to like help brush up their resume, help brush up their LinkedIn profiles, definitely, feel free to reach out. And then in terms of like, you know, what I want you to take away from this, like, you got this. Don't forget, you have a network of people out there. Everyone has been laid off these days. So, like, there are a bunch of people out there that are trying to help each other. For me, I like to help people because if they get a job, that means they'll probably refer me. So I'll get a job soon too. So don't be afraid to help others. Just like Madison mentioned too, like definitely, put your best foot forward. I believe in the universe will pay you back. It really will. Like she mentioned those 10x dividends or whatever, earlier, like helping someone else will definitely help you in the long run as well. So yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And we are at the end of our time, but Chris and I are both on LinkedIn. So if you do have further questions, I know both of us are happy to provide resources. I also share people who are looking for roles in my newsletter. So if there is anyone on here who is looking for a role, I'm super happy to feature you. Just shoot me a DM. I'm having knee surgery next week, so it may not be next week, but maybe the following week. I do have someone who wants the mic, so I'm just going to give them the mic. We have literally 1 minute.
We have 2 minutes. I shared both Madison's and my LinkedIn in the comments.
So I think I gave Fabiana the mic.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, hi.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Hi.
Good, thank you. Nice to meet you, and thank you for the great talk. So I want to quickly ask a question. What are your recommendations in salary negotiation when we live in a global environment? And you know that sometimes companies give you a salary proposal according to the place where you live, but you know that the solutions that we bring to the table sometimes are higher than the actually salary proposal that we get. How can we negotiate with that around the table?
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of like salary negotiations, like I think what you definitely need to do is number one, do your research, see what your market could potentially pay for that role at other companies, look up what competitors are doing. Like for example, like if you look up like levels.fyi, like that will show you like a variety of different levels, a variety of different pay structures for the same role that you're like applying for at that company. But of course, in different locations, it's going to be a different price range. Like when it comes to the US, like usually like New York and San Francisco are like the highest, then like maybe like Seattle, LA, and then like you have like like Austin and like Colorado and like DC, and then like you know after that they kind of have like a base floor rate for like people that are remote. So what I've noticed lately in the market is that if you're remote, or if that company has like a hub where they want people to go to a location, they're probably paying a little more to go into that location versus the remote person. So I feel like for you, definitely do your research, look on like, websites like Glassdoor. Literally what's so crazy, for those 88 jobs that I applied to, all I typed in was the company name, the exact title of the role, and then the word salary, and it will pop up somewhere on the internet, will give me like a guesstimate. Now, what you could also do to leverage is just simply tell them like, hey, I'm currently making more at this other, or my current role, or another company, provided me an offer that is paying more with a sign-on bonus. With this, they have a higher percentage in their annual bonus that they're giving, like whatever the case is. It really requires data in order for you to be able to like drive that conversation. I try and drive that at the beginning of the conversation. When you're in that conversation with the recruiter, I tell them the research that I did. I share a range with them that I found online and ask them if that's accurate. And then they'll say, oh, actually, the range is this. And also, if you look at the jobs, as I mentioned earlier, that with the new law in New York will post and show you what those jobs are paying. So you could use that to leverage as well.
Thank you so much. That's great. Thanks.
No problem.
So we are over time, which I fully expected from the two of us. I appreciate everyone being here. I appreciate you so much, Chris, for all of your insight and all of your resources. It is not something that any of us can put a dollar amount on. You are phenomenal. You are such a wonderful human, and so grateful that I got to spend this time with you. If you haven't already, please connect with Chris. And again, you can connect with me as well. I'm happy to use my resources so I can help anyone in this chat, and I know Chris is as well. Enjoy your next sessions and have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you, Madison. You are amazing too. And I'm sorry, y'all. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.